Hello, everybody. So, Brothers of War is out, and we are testing one of the most popular cards from the set, Arcane Proxy, in the mid-range pile. As you already know, people jam all kind of things in the four-color Omnat piles, and every time the new popular card comes out, people will probably eventually try it in the four-color Omnat pile. And I really like casting the cards without mana value from the graveyard, and I'm a definitely fan of Arcane Proxy. And I just wanted to cast some Ancestral Visions again in the Modern, and we have some ways to cast it. We're playing three Shardless Agent in the deck, which definitely has some great cascade options. Whatever you hit, like Ren, Expressive Iteration, or Dramis Call, Ice Fang, and Ancestral Vision especially, is just incredibly powerful. The weakest hit is definitely Lightning Bolt, but we got to play some cheap removal in the deck. We can't just play Solitude Fury. We can, but then we need ways to flicker them and some other way to kill some creatures on turn 1, 2, like Leyland Binding and stuff like that. But I wanted to play both here because of I'm playing two Arcane Proxies. We are playing four Eldrami's Calls. So Eldrami's Call can be used to find Arcane Proxy and replay the Ancestral Vision from the graveyard, which then draws you three cards and just makes incredible grind and value. You can also find your Fury, Solitude, Omnats, and one of Endurance in the main or the sideboard cards, and it's definitely very good. And Arcane Proxy can recast all those cards from the graveyard, not just Ancestral Vision. You can recast the Iteration, Eldrami's Call, Vision, Bolt, everything. So all hits are very desirable, very stuff you really want to play, and Eldrami's Call also can be used to find another Arcane Proxy and recast another card from your graveyard and stuff like that. It just has very good uh, value in a deck with playing Ancestral Vision as an additional card draw. So you know that a lot of people are playing four color Omnat piles, and you kind of need if you're already playing it, I want that my deck is good in a mirror match because we already know that a deck is great. Every version of a deck is great against aggro decks, and just a Dramis Call into Solitude Fury while having another removal, Santa Fairies, Ren and Six, Ice Fangs. It's I definitely want some other way of to make your deck more grindy than the mirror version. Okay, so on the sideboard we are playing some cards to utilize our Jammy's Call, some creature cards, two Meddling Mages. These two cards stop a lot of decks, a lot of combo decks, Cascade decks. Are real weak to these cards, especially Living End. We are playing some temporary lockdown to make small aggro matchups like that in Texas, like Zoo, like Hammer Time, Scales. It's really good in that matchups. We are playing some Land Hate, two Spreading Seas, one Boseiju, also an additional Artifact Enchantment Fate, and some Force of Figures, one Tutorable Knight of Autumn, Graveyard Hate, Endurance, one in the main, one at the sideboard, two Resting Pieces, and two Mystical Disputes to protect ourselves against counter spells and subtleties and stuff like that. So this is the deck, and I will just go. I just played one league with this deck. Uh, I finished it 4-1. I lost the game. The only game I lost was my own mistake, a big mistake. So it should have been a trophy league, but whatever. Sometimes you can, yeah, sometimes you just misplay. It happens when you're playing a new deck. especially when you're trying to do it all the time. Okay, so we'll just go through the league, and this is the one time I wasn't able to cast Ancestral Vision turn one. In all other games I always casted turn one, but this is a really specific situation where I just couldn't afford to cast it, and I was forced to play the Triumph turn one, and that really doesn't happen that often, but it didn't matter that much. I was able to try to cast my second run and suspended the division on turn 3. Okay, my opponent was on the Rhinos. I decided to go for a third Snowland, cast my Ice Fang, hold Solitude for next turn. I had the Ancestral Vision ticking, um, making my opponent nervous, probably. Okay, we'll hide this to make the game screen bigger. Okay, my opponent decides to go for the attack, but I have Solitude in hand. Most of the Rhinos list don't play Subtlety main, so I'm pretty safe in casting this Solitude and killing both of the Rhinos. I'm fine if they cast another. They didn't, so I'm able to play the Fairy, bounce the Scion, play my Wren, attack with Solitude for 3, gain some life. I have Omnat in hand with Ancestral Vision resolving, just drawing me 3 cards, uncounterable with the Fairy. Having the Omnat in hand, Eldrami's Coal Ice Fang makes a pretty bad position for my opponent, who concedes after I play Omnat. Okay, so a quick game against Rhinos. Just overvalued them, and even a turn 3 Ancestral Vision was still very good in this matchup. Okay, so game 2 in match 1, I keep mediocre hand, but I have my meddling mage, have the temporary lockdown, uh, so it's still pretty fine. My opponent goes for Scion. I decide to go meddling mage, crashing full force, so they can't do the Rhinos next turn, which I think is pretty important. And I decide to kill the Scion, take off some of the pressure. My opponent, of course, goes the Rhinos next turn, and I was in a pretty safe position because I had the temporary lockdown. So my opponent just had the Shardless on the field, nothing really going on, but my opponent plays the Fairy at this point, which kind of complicates the situation a little bit. I decide, after the iteration, I decide for a bit riskier play. So I went for the Teferi, bounce the Shardless Agent, uh, making them able to recast the Shardless in case they have the removal for Teferi, and they did have it. So again, I go the iteration, I destroy the binding, bounce one of the tokens, and just play the Sacred Foundry. I unfortunately have to take 6, and the opponent's Teferi just complicates the situation for me. I got. I was holding the Boseiju for to destroy the Leyline binding, but I accidentally pressed the F6 and I didn't succeed to respond on time. And my opponent's casting the outburst to get back my meddling mage to counter the spell. So kind of misclick or misplay, whatever. I just press the F6. When you press the F6, you agree to everything that happens in your turn, and I didn't succeed to stop it on time before my opponent resolved the Rhino, so I had to go to the game 3. Okay, so Boseiju unbinding into resolving the meddling mage, countering the Rhinos, and then uh, jumping the shardless would be pretty good, letting me survive one more turn, try to find something. So I suspend my vision. I was kind of holding Boseiju, hoping to find another land so I can keep Boseiju in hand. And I did find a iteration, just played my Misty and passed the turn. Okay, so opponent then goes for the Scion and suspends the Footfalls. Some pretty slow pace for my opponent. I was just able to play my Wren, fetch my land, hold Boseiju for the Scion, and just have the Omnat plus Fury plus Magic Mage, temporary lockdown, all these cards for the next turn. Unfortunately, I gave my opponent a 5th land to play the Fury, but it's not really a big deal. I was hoping for a fetch and I did get it, so it was a really great situation for me, just playing the Omnat, fetching into Gaming Sun Life, play the Shardless Agent, play the Meddling Mage, find the Ancestral Vision. My opponent has to use the Force of Negation, but I also have one resolving turn after. I play the Meddling Mage, so my opponent has to kill it before casting the Cascade spell. My opponent counters one Ancestral Vision, but they can counter the other. I just gain some more life, play my Fury to kill opponent's Fury, and I have the Mage on the field, so my opponent can't even cast the Cascade, and I'm able to attack and concede. Okay, so that was game 3, match 1. Okay, so this was match 3. I skipped the match 2, which was a loss, and I just made a misplay in that match, which cost me the game. I really don't want to rewatch it, so I'll just skip it for now. Okay, so I decided to just shock in with Fountain, hold a Jami's Call for next turn. Still didn't know what I was playing against still. But after my opponent plays the denial, it's clear that it's probably just a zoo. So I decided to go for the iteration, find Omnat and find a basic land. I'm just fine holding this position. I have the Arcane Proxy. I can go for another iteration. Eldrami is cool, but I decided just to play Omnat, draw another card, and try to play around them having the double Tribal Flames or Tribal Flames Bolt. I just didn't want to die. My opponent can counter the Solitude, so it's pretty safe at this point. Not really, if they have the double Tribal Flames or something, or Tribal Flames Bolt. So they attack with both. I should have played Solitude before combat to make them unable to do another trigger, which was pretty good for them. They discarded 2 lands, and I decided to go for Alexander Lounge because they discarded 1 black source, and in case they obviously didn't play another black source, so they just I just took 1 damage less, and my opponent goes for the attack, and I have the Solitude. They can't counter the Solitude, so I was hoping to kill 1, exile 1, block another, trade with another, but It didn't happen, and my opponent just finished me with the Tribe of Flames. But I was able to win the next two rounds. I boarded in some temporary lockdowns, which are pretty good in this matchup. I boarded in some more removals, one more Presage. My opponent just goes for another Nakatel. I play my Wrenn 6, find the very important third land. My opponent has to waste another card to get rid of my Wrenn. I go for the Shardless. Find the Spreading Seas. My opponent is stuck on lands, and they decided to save their Nakato. Push two damage, two damage through. So I could just go on that next turn. I'm able to Spreading Seas their land, play the Shardless Agent, kill both of their Nakatals, and just Eldrami's call, Shardless into Eldramis into Fury was very good. And I'm able to start attacking and holding the Nakatal and the Force of Vigor in hand. They succeed to kill the Omnat, but they were in a pretty bad position. My top decks are just way stronger. And I cast my Force, kill their Scion, cast my Ice Fang. They're on 4 life at this point, so I just attack for 3, forcing them into binding my Shardless Agent, which isn't the greatest play, but something they had to do. I also had a Solitude for the Ragavan, making it awkward again. They had the ice, so I just decided to stay back with my Ice Fang. I draw into temporary lockdown, which is a good, decent, very good draw against my opponent's deck. I just decide to hold with temporary lockdown until my opponent wastes cards for dealing with Ice Fang Kotal. They just go Kawu attack, cycle another land from hand, and plays another Kawu, and I have temporary lockdown in hand, which is just great in this position. Even if they have the binding to deal with it, I still found another Solitude. So set my opponent on 2 life, gaining some more life with Solitude. With another Solitude in hand means it's game over. So game 3. Game 3 is trickier on the draw. I keep hand with 2 Passages, which is okay. I can go Rogren turn 1, play one of my Passages, and then hold the another for the Scion, Leyland Binding, something like that. My opponent had a low time, but still played very slowly. I find the fetch, so I didn't even play the Passage. I find the Ranru Falls to try to make my Ice Fang Kotal better. At this position, I have a lot of answers in the hand, like Night of Autumn, Ice Fang. I decided my opponent had Ragavan in hand, so I decided it's best to go Knight, kill Scion, and have Knight as a blocker on the field for the Ragavan. My opponent goes for the binding in response to the Omna trigger, so I just stay back this turn, trying to jump, but my opponent had the Fire Ice, cleared the way, putting me on 7 life. Uh, My opponent decides to play the Leyland Binding and concede a game in response, so that was it. That was a game against Zoo. We'll now see the game against a player, a shooter Shutokan, which mostly plays humans. He played Asmo version of humans, which is pretty interesting. Pretty cool deck. Okay, so I kind of knew they're probably playing humans. They're mostly playing humans, so I just decided to go for the Ice Fang and try the Expressive Iteration next turn. They play Lavinia main, so they play Lavinia, play the Meddling Mage on Rise and Reef, but they kind of fail with that choice because I don't play Rise and Reef, of course. So I decide to hope they maybe attack, so I just stay back with Endurance. My opponent discards the sorry, it wasn't that turn. They find the Asmo. They think about attacking, but they decide against it. I still decide to play the Endurance on their turn to just have it as a good blocker to buy me some more time until I play some of my cards. I decide to kill the Lavinia and hold the Solitude if needed. But it's always better to just cast it for 5 mana in this matchup if you can't. My opponent plays another Meddling Mage. They named the Leyline Binding, but it's not just another bad name because I just wasn't playing it. And but it didn't really matter because I had a lot of different cards in hand and on 7 cards at this point, so pretty low chances for my opponent to get back into this game. So for this turn, I just decide to play Solitude, to kill the Asmo before they can sack the 2 foods to get value out of Asmo. But opponent had a decent hand. Opponent had a decent hand, then went for another Ranger into another Asmo, making 2 food tokens, being able to kill my Omnat. But it just doesn't matter. I have another one in hand with another iteration and another. With another iteration, 2 Shardless Agents, both Seiju, so kind of everything I need. I realize my opponent is playing only 2 planes, so Boseiju is definitely not bad in this matchup. My opponent plays more creatures. I decide to go for the iteration, find the run, get back, fetch, gain some life, gain some mana, then play the Fury and just get rid of the most dangerous creatures at this point, which is Asmo and the champion, so they can't they can kill my creatures. My opponent finally finds the Oval Chase Daredevil and gets Urza Saga on the field, but I have the Boseiju in the graveyard. I have 2 Shardless Agents doing. I decide first to just get rid of the Saga with Boseiju, then cast my Shardless Agents. See what I'll find with those, and I did find the iteration. put the fairy in hand, bolt. I made a mistake of not playing the fairy first, played the bolt first on ranger, so they sack it on response, but it really didn't matter. It was just a bad position for my opponent. And that was it, so they concede. Okay, game two for the humans match. I keep the bolt, the drum is called the running six, a pretty decent hand for that matchup. Also, Boseiju, Boseiju in hand to deal with Ethervile, cookbook, stuff they find. Very good overall position for me. My opponent is also forced to attack the running six, which just saves me a whole lot of life. And I'm able then again to just plus the run, get ran out of the lethal range, and I first use the Boseiju, then use Ren to get back the Boseiju, and putting Ren on 3, so my opponent has to attack it again. They go Specialist into Asmo. Luckily Asmo can't attack. Okay, so I just decided to kill the cookbook, making them unable to generate the second food token. And I hold the Eldramis for the next turn. They go Talis Lieutenant, which is pretty good, killing my Wren, dealing some damage to face. But I found I had the Omnat Fury play for next turn, which always just buys these decks. Into play again, so I was able to gain some life, gain 5 mana, cast my Fury, then succeeding to cast the to kill the Lavinia and the Talis Lieutenant, and I chose Fury instead of Solitude because Fury trades better with their creatures. My opponent makes another, finds another cookbook, makes another food token, discards another card to just kill another one, to kill my Fury. And I decide to let all the damage through. Um, and then again, find the Fury, kill the cookbook with the Boseiju again, then cast my Fury and hold the Solitude in case I need it. I also gain some life in response. I also gain some life with Omnat. I trade with Fury, this champion. So I'm again able to gain some life, putting myself into very comfortable position. So I just cast Shardless and my opponent concedes. Okay, so Shardless into Expressive Iteration has been, or the Ancestral Vision, has been very good. And I have been able to, in this matchup, just suspend the Ancestral Vision turn 1, which means I can waste my resources if needed. I can ditch the Fury, the Solitude without much problems, and be sure that turn 5 I'll get my cards back. I'll refill the hand and then be able to get back into the game in case I'm forced to ditch a lot of these cards early. I go for the Ice Fang at this point, but my opponent has a Trickster, making me unable to block it and try to trade with it. And they go for the Tide Shaper, so I just decide it's best to try to kill everything and hope for run with the Charles, which I did get, and just to ping Trickster for another damage. And I had blockers for the next turn. I have Ancestral Vision, resolving next turn. Which is going to be incredibly hard for my opponent to deal with, almost impossible. So I'm just able to cast the suspended card at turn 1, and then use my pitch elementals and the removals to you can see I find Arcane Proxy in this position, which means I'm able to cast it again from my hand, recast the Ancestral Vision, but I have so many cards right now that I even don't want it. But it can be a really good grinding tool in the mirror matchup where your opponent also has access to all these value cards, and it can be game winning in those matchups. Just drawing 3 cards and then drawing 3 cards again just can really overwhelm the mirror matchup or other mid-range piles. So that was the game 1 against Merfolk. I keep a hand with the 2 Ancestral Vision, which I think it's very decent. The hand would be good if I had something like some pitch elemental in hand, Solitude, Fury. It just works very well when you're trying to survive the early turns and then refill the hand after. If your opponent doesn't have counter for that spell, he's in a bad situation. So I think I again misplayed here. I went for iteration. I should have gone for the fairy bounce this violin. And if I just bounce this violin, my opponent will be forced to attack the fairy, not drawing a card with violin. Then I will be in much better position with another card the next turn. And expressive iteration, but it wasn't the greatest. It wasn't the greatest position. I was able to cast the temporary lockdown, but my opponent had a subtlety with Mutavolt for lethal, and that was it. So I concede. If I found Solitude, I would definitely be in a great position. Again, I suspend Ancestral Vision turn 1. I'm preparing to go the Vren turn 2. My opponent uses Force on Vren, which was fine by me. I had the expressive iteration, Ice Fang, Charlotte Side Agent, all good cards. This position just drawing me additional cards, trying to find some more lands. I decided to play slowly, just play my iteration, find another cards I need, stay back with Ice Fang. My opponent plays the Chalice, so I'm unable to resolve my Ancestral Vision. They go Subtlety on my Ran, which I kind of expected. So I just bottom the Ran, play my Teferi, bounce the Subtlety, making them unable to use it. They tried to kill the Teferi at all costs here, but I killed the Mutavolt with Solitude, untapping with Charles Agent, Bolt, just making the game pretty hard for my opponent. I find the Arcane Proxy. I kill I killed the subtlety, and then I forgot about Chalice. I could have replayed the iteration or dramas, everything, but I just it was just a brain fart moment from my side, and I just played this one badly, getting my ancestral vision countered. But whatever, I'm I'm on such a great position. At this point, it's very hard for my opponent to get back into this game. This deck just has the much better draws, and I know my opponent has the subtlety in hand, so I go for the Fury anyway. But they're forced to pitch the another blue card from hand to save this violence, so I keep the Fury on top. My opponent goes for this violent attack. I block with everything. They don't have the other merfolk to give Sviolin indestructible. And I just replay my other Omnat, so it didn't really matter that that I had that terrible misplay with Arcane Proxy into Chalice. It didn't even matter. I had I was in a too good position. Okay, so I go for the Teferi, and my opponent plays the Hexcatcher, and I play my Fury first to target all the Merfolks, then bounce one of them into the hand, and draw a card, and just attack for lethal. That was it. Okay, so that were all the games. I won't show. I didn't play very good this league, but decided to make the video anyway. We won't go through the feed because it was just another brain fart moment from my side, which in a match which easily could have, which I could have just easily won. And that's it. The deck felt pretty good. Arcane Ancestral Vision was good, very good in the matchups I needed it, and it was in the matchups I knew it wouldn't be especially good. So it was really deciding in a lot of matchups, especially those mid-range matchups. It was deciding resolving the Ancestral Vision with the Shardless or from the Suspend, or just recasting it with Arcane Proxy. I think Arcane Proxy was mediocre, but playable in this kind of shell. You could maybe it could it wasn't I can't say it was bad. It casted the iteration a few times, Jami schools, bolts, ancestral vision, so it wasn't bad, but I had even bigger hopes for him, and some of the times I didn't cast it because I was playing around some other cards from my opponent's deck. But being able to Eljami School for the Arcane Proxy to recast the Ancestral Vision or iteration from the graveyard has been pretty satisfying, and I've done that in the on few moments, few occasions, and it felt like decent. It felt like a possible option to play, and I will definitely try to use the card in different archetypes, some combo decks, but also some fair mid-range piles like this one. Next mid-range pile I want to try the proxy in is definitely some Sultai mid-range deck I have in mind. And that's it for now. Okay, so hope you like the deck, like the gameplay. You can hit the subscribe button, hit the like button to support the channel. And that's it until the next time. Okay.